Toma lived alone. His small farm sat quietly on the edge of the wild hills of Varnal, a faraway colony world. There were no neighbors nearby, only wide yellow fields, rough hills, and strong winds that carried dust from the mountains. Toma's farm was old. The machines were slow, and the fences broke too often. But Toma didn't mind. He liked silence. Every day, he woke up early. He fed the 2 farm droids that helped him. He checked the soil levels. He fixed broken pipes. He drank plain tea. The days were all the same. That was how Toma liked it, once. Many years ago, Toma had a family, a wife, a little boy. But they were gone now, lost in the First Colony War. He never talked about them. He kept one old photo in a metal box under his bed. The rest, he buried deep in his heart. It was near the end of the season, just before the cold rains came. Toma was walking the north fence line. He carried a tool pack on his back and a small scanner in his hand. One of the motion sensors had gone quiet during the night, likely a sand rabbit again. Chewing the wires, he sighed. More repairs. As he walked, the wind picked up. It carried a strange sound, a high cry, sharp and quick, like a bird but louder. Toma stopped. The wind blew again. Another cry, longer this time, like something in pain. He turned toward the hills. It wasn't a bird. Toma had been a soldier once, long ago. His body was slower now, but his instincts were still sharp. He crouched low, followed the rocks, and moved toward the sound. Soon, he reached the edge of a wide canyon deep and filled with red stone. The cries were coming from below. He dropped to his stomach and crawled forward, peering over the edge. That's when he saw them. There were 2 small creatures, white as snow, their scales shining under the sun. Long tails, thin wings, sharp but beautiful. Dragons, but not the kind from old Earth stories. These were real, alien and elegant. They looked weak. One limped, the other stayed close, trying to shield its sibling with its thin body. And they weren't alone. 3 men stood nearby, dressed in dark gear. Not colony workers, off-worlders. Their clothes were dusty, their boots heavy. One of them held a shock spear. Another carried a thick net. They were talking in low voices. 2 albinos, one of them said, grinning, "We're lucky. These sell high, quick job." The other replied, "Tie them and get out, before anyone sees." Toma narrowed his eyes. Smugglers, thieves. He didn't care where the creatures came from. They didn't deserve this. He looked at the path down. It would take too long. He needed a way to distract them. Then he remembered he still carried his old rifle under the seat of the fence buggy. He had kept it, even though he hadn't used it in years. Toma turned, moved fast and quiet, back to the buggy. Minutes later, he was standing above the canyon again, this time with the rifle in his hands. The wind was behind him, the sun at his back. He raised the weapon. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. One warning shot boomed. It echoed through the canyon like thunder. The men below shouted and dropped their tools. One looked up and saw him. Toma aimed again, slowly, calmly. The men ran. He kept the rifle pointed until they were far, just black dots running toward a small ship hidden in the cliffs. Then he lowered it. The 2 creatures hadn't moved. They were still curled together, shaking. One had blood on its leg. Toma's voice was quiet but strong. "It's all right now," he said. "They're gone." Of course, they didn't understand. But maybe they understood his tone. Toma took the long path down, careful on the rocks. When he reached the bottom, he moved slowly toward them. The larger one hissed weakly. The smaller one just blinked, too tired to move. He knelt a few feet away. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "I'm just trying to help." He reached into his coat and took out a soft cloth. Slowly, he held it out. The larger one sniffed the air, then looked at the injured sibling. After a long pause, it stepped back. Toma moved forward. He wiped the blood, gently tied a bandage. He worked carefully, speaking in a calm voice. He had fixed broken fences, broken machines, broken bones. He could do this. When he finished, both creatures stared at him with large, pale pink eyes. There was fear, but also something else. Trust. Toma stood up. Let's get you somewhere safe. He led them back to the buggy. They were slow, unsure, but they followed. Maybe they didn't know where else to go. When they reached the barn, Toma made them a nest of warm cloth and hay in the corner. He turned off the lights so they wouldn't feel trapped. He brought water and soft fruit. He sat nearby, watching them as they ate. Night fell. Rain tapped gently on the roof. Toma leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, eyes half closed. The dragons, if that's what they truly were, curled up together, eyes blinking sleepily. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe the smugglers would return. Maybe the colony would come asking questions. But for now, he had guests strange, beautiful, lost guests. And for the first time in many years, Toma didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, soft sunlight came through the barn's dusty windows. Toma opened the door slowly, holding a warm pot of food. He didn't know what the creatures ate, but he brought cooked roots, sliced fruit, and a little honey water. To his surprise, both of them were awake. The bigger one stood in front of the smaller one, wings stretched a little, as if ready to protect. Its white scales glowed in the light, and its long tail tapped the floor. The smaller one stayed low, head resting on its claws, eyes tired. Toma crouched near the edge of the straw. No need to be scared, he said gently. I brought something. You can try it. He placed the bowl near them and stepped back. The bigger dragon sniffed the air, then looked at Toma, unsure. After a few seconds, it stepped forward and took a piece of fruit. It bit softly, then paused. A moment later, it ate again, this time faster. It pushed the bowl gently toward the smaller one, making a low humming sound. Toma watched carefully. So you do take care of each other, he whispered. Smart pair. He spent the next hour sitting in the corner, watching them eat and clean their wings. They were thin and young, probably still growing. They didn't look wild or dangerous. Now, they looked soft, almost gentle. Toma scratched his chin. Where did you come from? The dragons didn't answer, of course, but their eyes said they were listening. Later that day, Toma turned on his old compad and checked the colony channel. He searched for reports, injured animals, missing cargo, strange sightings. Nothing came up. No one had reported white dragons. No one had said anything about smugglers either. He sat back in his chair, staring at the screen. If no one's looking for you, he said aloud, then who made you? He thought for a long time. He had seen strange things in the war, labs, cloning, bio-creatures built for science or war. Maybe these two were made that way too. But they didn't look like weapons. They looked like something new, something rare, something valuable. That worried him. Toma went back outside and checked the fences again. He worked with care, but his mind was full. He kept thinking of the smugglers, the way they laughed, the way they said sell high. If they came back, they would come angry, maybe with more men, maybe with guns. He looked at the sky. I can't let them take them, he said quietly. That night, he brought a blanket and an old storybook into the barn. He sat on a crate near the nest and read aloud. It was a simple story about a boy and a tree that could talk. The dragons didn't understand the words, but they watched him, blinking slowly. When he laughed softly, the smaller one made a happy noise. I guess you like stories, Toma said. Smiling, the big one stretched its neck and stared at him closely. Its eyes were deep pink, but soft, almost sad. It made a small sound, something like a whisper and a chirp mixed together. Toma didn't know what it meant, but it wasn't a threat. Do you have names? He asked. The bigger one tilted its head. Toma pointed to the larger dragon. You're strong and sharp. You move like smoke. I'll call you Ash, then. He pointed to the smaller one. You're quiet and light. Your scales are like snow. I'll call you Snow. Ash blinked once. Snow gave a tiny sneeze. Toma laughed. That's fair. Over the next few days, Ash and Snow became braver. Snow liked to follow Toma around the farm, hopping behind him as he fixed water lines or picked fruit. Ash stayed near the barn roof, keeping watch when Toma fed the droids. Ash made a sound like a warning, as if saying, be careful. They were learning fast. They began to understand simple words. Eat, no, come, stay. Toma didn't push them. He spoke gently, like a teacher. They copied his sounds, sometimes strange but clear. They were not like animals. They were more. One evening, Snow climbed into Toma's lap while he sat outside watching the stars. The dragon's body was warm and soft, and it hummed quietly like a sleeping kitten. Toma looked down. Unsure, slowly, he placed his hand on Snow's back. You're not just lost, he whispered. You're looking for something. Maybe someone to keep you safe. He thought of his own son, his wife, the silence they left behind. Maybe Snow and Ash were filling that space now. Maybe they were lonely, too. But peace didn't last long. On the sixth night, as the stars turned red in the sky, Toma saw something moving on the horizon, a dark shape, too big to be an animal, too fast. He grabbed his scope and looked closer. A small ship, no lights. Flying low, Toma's heart dropped. They're back, he said quietly. He ran to the barn. Ash, Snow, inside, now. Ash leaped down and spread his wings wide. Snow rushed behind him. They seemed to understand. Danger was coming. Toma opened the underground shelter door. It was an old storm bunker, made of strong steel and rock. He hadn't used it in years. Get in, he told them. They didn't move. He pointed. Safe, down there. Ash sniffed the air, then nodded just once. He stepped inside. Snow followed. Toma sealed the door and covered it with straw. Then he grabbed his old rifle, checked the power cell, and stepped outside. The dark shape in. The sky was getting closer. Toma's jaw tightened. If they want trouble, he said. They picked the wrong farm. He stood still, tall and strong, waiting under the stars. He was no longer just a farmer. He was a protector now. The night was quiet, but Toma could feel trouble in the air. The sky above was dark, except for the pale red moon that hung low like a watchful eye. Toma stood outside the barn with his old rifle in his hands, watching the distant hills. The ship he saw earlier had disappeared behind the trees near the canyon. He waited. No sound came. Then a soft beep came from his pocket. It was the fence alarm. Someone had crossed the north boundary. They're here, Toma whispered. He stayed calm. He had been through worse before. Back in the war, he had stood his ground many times, but this felt different. He wasn't just protecting land or machines. This time, he was protecting lives inside the barn. The two dragons, Ash and Snow, lay hidden in the underground shelter. The place was strong, with metal walls and a heavy door. They were safe, for now. Toma moved quietly around the side of the barn. He checked the power lines and turned on the motion lights, but nothing showed. No footsteps. No voices. Maybe they were hiding. Maybe they were waiting for him to sleep. He didn't sleep that night. He stayed outside, walking the edges of his land, eyes sharp, rifle ready. But the thieves didn't come. Not yet. The next morning, the air was cooler than usual. A light fog rolled over the fields. Toma opened the shelter door and looked inside. Ash raised his head quickly, alert. Snow was curled beside him, blinking slowly. It's all right, Toma said softly. They didn't come. But we can't relax. Ash crawled out first. His white wings brushed the dirt, and his pink eyes glowed faintly in the morning light. Snow followed, yawning and stretching. Toma handed them fruit and a bucket of water. He sat on a crate and watched them eat. You to learn fast, he said. Faster than anything I've seen. Ash looked at him and tilted his head. You understand me, don't you? Toma asked. Ash didn't speak, but he gave a slow blink, then turned to help Snow with a heavy fruit. He used his claws gently to split it in half and passed the bigger piece to Snow. Toma smiled. You take care of her like an older brother. He stood up, dusted off his coat, and sighed. If those smugglers return, I won't be able to fight them alone. Not if they bring more weapons. Ash looked up at him, listening. Snow came closer and leaned against Toma's boot. She made a soft noise, something like a hum and a purr. Toma reached down and rubbed her head. I need help, he said aloud. I need to ask someone I trust. Later that day, Toma sent a short message to an old friend Mila, a vet who lived in a small station 3 valleys away. She wasn't part of the main colony command. She kept to herself, like Toma did. But she had knowledge, and more important, she had a kind heart. He didn't say much in the message. Just, found 2 young creatures, hurt, intelligent, strange behavior, possible danger nearby, need advice, quietly. He didn't mention dragons or smugglers. He didn't trust the colony channels. Too many eyes, too many questions. The next morning, Mila arrived in a small hover truck. She wore a gray coat and carried a scanner bag. Her hair was tied back, and her eyes were sharp. Toma met her near the barn. Still don't like visitors? She joked. Still don't like talking. He replied. She smiled. That's fair. He led her inside the barn. When she saw Ash and Snow, her mouth opened slightly. She didn't speak for a long time. They're not just creatures, she said finally. They're engineered. I thought so, Toma said. She moved slowly, carefully scanning their bodies. No tags, no brands, no chips. They were made in a lab, Mila said. Not born in the wild. But they're not weapons. Not that I can see. Snow sniffed Mila's hand, then licked her finger. She trusts me, Mila said, surprised. They trust people who are kind, Toma replied. Mila looked serious now. Toma, you have something rare here. This is beyond colony law. If someone finds out, they'll come. They already came, Toma said. 3 smugglers. Tried to trap them. I scared them off. I think they'll be back, Mila frowned. You're not safe here. I'm not leaving, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. You've grown soft. No, he said. I've found something worth protecting. Ash made a short sound, almost like agreement. Before Mila left, she handed him a small chip. It's a jammer, she said. Blocks trackers. Hide it near the barn. And Toma, yes, don't let anyone else see them. Not even me. Not again. Toma nodded. He understood. This wasn't just about safety. It was about keeping them free. That evening, the wind grew stronger. Toma and the dragon sat outside, watching the sky. The sun dipped low, casting orange light over the land. Snow crawled beside him and rested her head on his leg. Toma looked down and smiled. You're both special, he said. And I don't just mean your wings or your scales. You learn. You listen. You feel. Ash sat close, eyes watching the horizon. Toma looked up at the stars. I lost a family once, he said quietly. I didn't think I'd have one again. Snow made a sound, not a word, but it was soft, sweet, like a whisper of understanding. Toma didn't speak after that. He just sat with them in silence. As the wind carried the first cold breath of night, the farm was quiet. But something new was growing there. Not just crops, something stronger, something called home. Morning light warmed the edges of the barn as Toma stepped outside with a mug of hot tea. His boots crunched softly on the dirt path. Behind him, Ash flew in short loops over the barn, stretching his wings. Snow followed close, still clumsy in the air but better than before. Toma watched them quietly, a small smile on his face. Just a few weeks ago, he was alone fixing fences, planting crops, speaking to no one but machines. Now, he had company. Not just any company. To dragons who acted more like children than beasts. Ash landed beside him with a quiet thump. Snow tried to land too but slipped and rolled across the dirt. She sat up quickly and looked at Toma, as if checking if he saw. He chuckled. You're getting better, Snow. That was almost graceful. She wagged her tail, pleased. Ash nudged Toma's hand gently. He wanted something. Breakfast? Toma asked. Ash gave a short sound, something like MMH, and pointed toward the barn. They had learned a lot in just a few days. Simple words, hand signals, even facial expressions. Snow loved to mimic Toma's actions like waving or nodding. Ash liked to watch, learn, then teach Snow. They were more than creatures, more than animals. They were like kids, and Toma was beginning to feel like something he had not felt in years, a father. Later that day, Toma showed them how to water the plants near the greenhouse. Snow splashed too much at first, but she laughed. At least it sounded like a laugh. Ash carefully lifted a bucket with his claws and poured slowly, watching Toma with serious eyes. "Smart boy," Toma said. Ash puffed proudly. They helped him carry tools, stack wood, even shoo off the small birds that tried to steal seeds. Snow chased the birds for fun, but always came back when Toma called. She liked to bring back small shiny things, nuts, old buttons, pieces of wire. She placed them in a neat pile inside the barn. Her collection. One evening, Toma sat in his old chair near the fire pit. He held a worn book in one hand and a mug in the other. Snow curled up beside his boots, resting her head on his leg. Ash sat across the fire, blinking slowly, wings folded in. "You two are different," Toma said softly. "Not just because of how you look, but because of what you feel." Ash tilted his head. "You're not wild," Toma continued. "You listen. You care. You protect." Ash looked down for a moment. Then he looked back up and made a soft sound, a low hum from deep in his chest. Snow shifted in her sleep. She made a small noise, like a sleepy chirp, and whispered a sound that made Toma's heart stop. "Dad," he froze. He looked down at her. "What did you say?" Snow didn't answer. She was already sleeping again, curled close. But he had heard it. Dad. He stared into the fire for a long time after that, holding his mug with shaking hands. The next morning, Toma woke early. He walked outside and found Ash sitting on the roof, watching the sky. Snow was still asleep inside the barn. Toma looked up. "Did you hear what she said last night?" Ash blinked once. Then he nodded. "You understand the word?" Toma asked. Ash made the same soft hum. Toma rubbed his beard. "She thinks I'm her father." Ash climbed down from the roof, wings tight against his sides. He stood in front of Toma and looked into his eyes, slowly. He touched his forehead to Toma's chest, a simple gesture, but powerful. Toma placed his hand gently on Ash's head. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered, "but maybe it's what I needed." Ash pulled back, his eyes calm and bright. Toma knelt down. "Then I'll protect you, both of you, no matter what comes." That day, a message crackled over the comm screen. It was short, cold. "Looking for 2 missing bio-assets, pale drakes, last seen near North Ridge. Reward offered. Report sightings to Central Command." Toma's hands tightened on the screen. He turned it off. "They're not assets," he said aloud. "They're not property. They're family." He walked to the barn and told Ash and Snow they had to stay hidden for a while. No flying, no showing themselves. They obeyed. But Snow looked sad. That night, she curled up beside Toma again, placing one claw gently on his arm. "Not safe?" she asked softly. Toma's chest ached. "No," he said. "Not yet, but soon." Snow looked up. "You keep us?" Toma nodded. "I'll keep you, always." She closed her eyes, peaceful again. Days passed. No one came. But the message stayed in Toma's mind. If someone was looking for them, then danger would return. He had to be ready. He began reinforcing the fences, setting traps near the edges, fixing the old defense drone buried behind the barn. Ash helped him, quietly, without being asked. Snow stayed close to, sometimes humming while she worked. Toma watched them, his heart both heavy and full. He had lost so much before. But now, something had returned. Not what he expected, not what he planned, but something he chose, and something that had chosen him. The sun was sharp and bright over the fields. Toma stood near the south fence, adjusting a metal beam with his wrench. The wind carried the scent of dry earth and warm grain. Inside the barn, Ash and Snow rested in the shade. They had spent the morning helping Toma fix the water lines. Now, they were sleeping, wings tucked tight. Toma wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked toward the hills, still quiet. But the quiet didn't feel peaceful today. It felt like silence before a storm. Later, that evening, Toma sat by the barn door with a plate of roasted roots and beans. Ash came out first, sniffing the food. Snow followed, curling up beside Toma like she always did. "You're both growing fast," Toma said. Soon you'll be too big for this old barn. Ash looked up at the stars and made a low hum. Snow blinked at Toma. Sky. Home? Toma nodded. Yes, one day, when it's safe, you'll fly wherever you want. Snow looked unsure. We'd stay. Toma smiled gently. You can stay as long as you like. Ash leaned closer, then touched his forehead to Toma's. Armed out a soft moment. A family made not by blood, but by choice. Just before midnight, the silence broke. A deep hum rolled across the sky. Toma opened his eyes. That sound wasn't thunder. It was engines. He rushed outside, rifle in hand, and looked up. A sleek black ship moved low across the hills, lights off, barely visible except for the shadow it cast on the land. It hovered near the edge of the canyon, the same place where Toma had first found the dragons. He narrowed his eyes. They're back. He ran to the barn. Ash was already standing, alert, wings tight, tail low. Snow stood behind him, afraid. Toma opened the floor hatch to the shelter, and now Ash hesitated. Toma touched his shoulder. Please. Ash gave one nod and climbed down. Snow followed. Toma sealed the hatch and covered it again. Then he took his rifle and walked into the dark. The wind was cold in the canyon. Toma crouched behind a boulder and watched the ship's ramp lower. 3 figures stepped out, tall, armored, and moving with purpose. One carried a scanner. The others had stun rifles. Tracks lead here. One of them said, They're close. Another man tapped his comm. No sign of locals. Farm's dead quiet. Toma stayed low, thinking fast. If they reached the barn, they would find the dragons. The jammer Mila gave him could only do so much. These men looked better equipped than the last group, smarter. Colder. Not just smugglers this time. Hunters. Toma moved back through the rocks, quiet and careful. He reached his hidden sensor tower and switched on the defense beacon. A red light blinked. Motion traps were now active. He set 3 near the old grain silos, another to by the water pipe. The last one he set right under the barn door. If they get close, he whispered, they'll get a surprise. Back at the ship, the men continued scanning. One stopped. Something's jamming the signal. Then search the old way, said the leader. Eyes and feet. The targets are worth more than the ship. They spread out. Toma watched from the shadows. He didn't fire. Not yet. He had one goal by time. Minutes passed. One hunter reached the fence line. The trap triggered. Zap. A burst of white light. The man fell, groaning. The others turned quickly. Someone's here. They moved fast, sweeping their rifles. Another trap went off, this time near the silo. Sparks flew, and smoke rose. Toma used the distraction. He moved along the outer edge of the farm and fired a warning shot into the air. They turned toward the sound. Toma ran the other way. His heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. He reached the barn, slid inside, and locked the doors. He opened the shelter hatch. Ash and Snow looked up. We have to move. Ash growled softly. I know, but they're too close. If we wait, they'll break through. Ash stepped out of the shelter. His body tensed. His eyes glowed bright. Toma placed a hand on his side. No killing, only protect. Ash made a sharp sound, clear, certain. Snow followed. She stayed close to Toma, her small wings pressed flat. They were ready. The first hunter reached the barn gate. He placed a scanner against the door. Heat signatures. 3 inside. He lifted his weapon. Then the door burst open. Ash charged forward with speed and strength. He leapt into the air and crashed down, wings wide. Body glowing faintly with heat, the hunter stumbled back. Snow followed, blasting a stream of cold mist that froze the ground. The men shouted. Toma stepped out. Last, rifle raised, leave, he shouted. Now, one hunter aimed at Ash. Toma fired. The man's gun flew from his hand. Another tried to grab Snow. Ash spun and hit him with his tail, knocking him down. The leader stood still, watching. These aren't animals, he said slowly. They're speaking. They're trained. No, Toma replied. They're free, and they've chosen to stay. The leader raised his comm. HQ, this is Echo 3. Subject status, sapient. Orders? Static buzzed. Then a voice answered. If they're sapient, leave them. Law says we can't take them by force. The leader cursed, then looked at Toma. You win today. Farmer. But they won't be safe forever. Toma stepped forward. They don't need to be safe forever. Just long enough to grow strong. Ash growled. Snow hissed. The hunters backed away. They boarded the ship and rose into the sky, vanishing into the stars. Silence returned to the farm. Toma dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Ash walked to him and nuzzled his shoulder. Snow curled beside his leg. Toma looked at both of them. You were brave, he whispered. I'm proud of you. Ash blinked slowly. Snow rested her head on his lap. Still want to call me Dad? He asked. Smiling, Snow whispered, always. And in that moment, under the stars and quiet wind, Toma no longer felt like just a lonely farmer. He felt like something more. He felt like home. The sun was just rising, casting soft golden light over Toma's farm. The air was cool, filled with the scent of earth and growing plants. The two albino dragons, Ash and Snow, were already awake, moving carefully around the barn. Ash stretched his wide wings slowly, while Snow practiced short flights between the haystacks. Toma watched them from the porch, sipping his tea. He felt calm today, something he hadn't felt in a long time. But deep inside, a small warning stayed with him. The dangers from before were not gone. They were only waiting. As the day went on, Toma and the dragons worked side by side. Ash helped carry tools, his strong claws gentle on the wooden handles. Snow followed Toma everywhere, sometimes tripping over small stones, but always eager to help. She enjoyed fetching small items and even learning how to use simple machines. The farm was alive with quiet joy. Suddenly, the peaceful morning was broken. From the far edge of the fields, Toma saw dust rising. Movement. More than just animals. His heart pounded. Trouble. He whispered. Ash and Snow heard him too. Ash's eyes darkened and his body tensed. Snow crouched low, wings spreading wide. Toma grabbed his rifle. The dust cloud grew closer, revealing a small group of armed men. They were the smugglers, stronger and more determined than before. They carried weapons and strange devices that blinked with lights. Behind them flew small drones, scanning the farm with sharp blue beams. Get ready, Toma said. Ash growled low, a warning rumble that shook the ground. Snow hissed softly, ready to defend. The smugglers didn't stop. They advanced quickly, calling out demands. Hand over the albinos, the leader shouted. No one needs to get hurt. Toma stepped forward. They're not yours. The leader laughed. They belong to the company that created them. We're just here to collect. Toma raised his rifle. Not today. The smugglers fired their weapons. Bright energy bolts flew through the air. Ash reacted first. With a powerful roar. He spread his wings wide. A cold mist escaped his mouth, freezing the ground beneath the smugglers' feet. The sharp ice cracked and spread, trapping some of the machines. Snow followed quickly. She flapped her wings and released a hot blast of fire, bright but controlled, aimed at the drones. The machines sparked and fell from the sky. The battle had begun. Toma moved carefully between the fighting dragons. He fired warning shots that made the smugglers hesitate. The team tried to surround him, but Ash and Snow fought fiercely. Ash's claws struck like lightning, breaking weapons and shields. Snow's fire and ice controlled the field, keeping the enemies apart. Toma's heart raced, but he stayed steady. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight for family. The leader of the smugglers saw the battle turning. He pulled out a small device, a pulse grenade. And this, he yelled. He threw the grenade near Ash. Toma shouted, no. Ash reacted fast. He pushed Snow aside and spread his wings to cover the blast. The grenade exploded with a bright flash, but Ash's scales glowed like a shield. The heat burned his wings, and he cried out in pain. But the blast did not break through. Snow flew to Ash's side, nuzzling him softly. Toma dropped his rifle and rushed forward. He grabbed a cloth and pressed it to Ash's wounded wing. You're strong, Toma said, voice shaking. You'll be okay. Ash blinked slowly, then made a soft growl of thanks. The smugglers, seeing their leader retreat, decided to flee. Toma watched as they ran, their weapons abandoned and their plans ruined. The field was quiet again. The dragon stood beside him, tired but alive. Toma looked at Ash's burned wing. "It'll heal," he said, "just like the rest of us." Snow curled up near his feet. Toma reached down and stroked her soft scales. "You're home now," he whispered. "No one will take you from here." Ash looked up, eyes shining. Snow rested her head on Toma's boot, and Toma knew, without a doubt, that this farm, this lonely place, had become a true family. The first light of dawn painted the sky in soft pink and gold. Toma stood outside, breathing the cool morning air. Round him, the farm was peaceful, the fields ripe, the barn quiet, and the wind carrying gentle whispers through the tall grass. Ash and Snow were awake too. Ash stretched his wings, now healed from the burn. Snow flapped her small wings happily, hopping beside Toma as he walked. It had been many weeks since the battle with the smugglers. Life had returned to the farm, but things had changed forever. Toma looked at the dragons. "You've grown strong," he said quietly. Ash nudged his hand, his pink eyes soft and warm. Snow chirped and lifted off the ground for a short flight, circling above Toma's head before landing again with a soft thud. Toma smiled. For the first time in a long time, he felt whole. As the sun rose higher, Toma sat near the barn with a simple breakfast. The dragons came to him, calm and happy. Snow curled in his lap, while Ash rested his head on Toma's shoulder. "You know," Toma began, "I never thought I'd have family again. But you two changed everything." Ash made a soft growl, and Snow purred softly. Toma laughed. "Dad, I'm not sure I'm ready for that title." Snow licked his hand and whispered, "You are." Toma's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of joy. Later that day, Toma took the dragons to the edge of the canyon where he first found them. The place was quiet, the stones warmed by the sun. "This is where your story began," Toma said softly, "but it's not where it ends." Ash spread his wings wide and gave a powerful roar that echoed through the valley. Snow flapped her wings and let out a happy chirp. Toma watched as they lifted into the sky, flying higher and higher, with grace and strength. But they didn't fly far. They circled back and landed near Toma. "You don't have to leave," Toma said. "You're home." Ash and Snow stayed close, their pale scales glowing in the sunlight. Days passed. Toma taught Ash and Snow more about the world, how to help on the farm, how to avoid dangers, and how to trust people again. In return, Ash and Snow shared something special with Toma, warmth he hadn't felt in years. The farm became a place of laughter, learning, and love. Neighbors, once distant and wary, began to visit, curious about the two beautiful dragons who lived with the farmer. Toma smiled at the new friendships. He was no longer lonely. One evening, under a sky full of stars, Toma sat by the fire with Ash and Snow. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, "but I know this: no matter what comes, we face it together." Ash and Snow nuzzled him, their eyes full of trust and love. For Toma, the lonely farmer, life had changed. He was no longer just a man. He was a father, a protector, and a friend. Together, they had found something rare, family made not by blood, but by choice. And that was the greatest treasure of all.